Hello, I'm Cinemod470. It's interesting how both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, though being set nearly 2 centuries apart, have a similar story. We have a king who inherited the throne, though not by choice. He loses the love of his life, or who he believes to be the love of his life, but that's a separate analysis. He remarries, and after he dies, the new wife causes a civil war within Westeros over the succession of the throne. Though, who was the better king, Robert Baratheon or Viserys Targaryen? Mind you, I'm not looking at who would beat who in a fight, that's a different video. It's Robert. Robert would win. I want to look at who was the better king. What was their demeanor? How did they handle state affairs? And how are they remembered? For this analysis, I will be looking at their lives from their on-screen adaptations and only using book sources for information preceding their respective shows. Robert Baratheon was the eldest son of House Baratheon and was betrothed to Lyanna Stark. After she was kidnapped by Prince Rhaegar and King Aerys executed her eldest brother and father, then ordered both Robert and Eddard Stark's execution, they both worked with Jon Arryn to rebel and overthrow the Mad King, killed Prince Rhaegar, and Robert became the new King of Westeros. During the rebellion, Robert's skill as a warrior and commander became well known in the realm and was later named the Demon of the Trident and used a warhammer that was so heavy that only he could lift it. After he won the war, Robert pardoned many of the Mad King's allies so long as they weren't of the Targaryen line, ensuring the loyalty of the former Targaryen loyalists, including Sir Barristan Selmy, Jaime Lannister, Varys, and Grand Maester Pycelle. Though this was likely due to Jon Arryn's advice as his new Hand of the King. The best way to sum up Robert's reign as king is this line by Varys. Robert was neither mad nor cruel, he simply had no interest being king. When people talk about Robert after he died, they tend to focus on two perspectives, that he was a great warrior and a terrible king. Which is fair, since most fans of A Song of Ice and Fire agree that when Robert was in his prime, he was one of the fiercest warriors in his era. When we are introduced to Robert, he seems very charismatic and down to earth, often talking about his past exploits, both in combat and the bedroom.
Bessie! Thank the gods for Bessie. And her tits.
But that's all he cares about. After Lyanna died, Robert wouldn't be able to move on. Instead, he would drink excessively and bed many women to numb the pain of her loss. He never actually mourned and healed and left most of the state matters to his Hand of the King and small council. In doing so, the kingdom was left in heavy financial debt due to his outlandish spending. His wife, Cersei Lannister, was scorned and cheated on so often she conspired to make him drunk while hunting so a boar could maim him. And Robert neglected his son, Joffrey, leaving him to indulge in his worst impulses, and moulding him into a second Mad King.
Sir Ilyn, bring me his head!
That being said, Robert wasn't a complete fool, as he understood the danger of the surviving Targaryens raising an army of Dothraki, and he knew how to keep the Lords of the Seven Kingdoms from rising against him. He even managed to stop the Greyjoy Rebellion 6 years after he took the crown. Robert was truly one of the greatest warriors in the Seven Kingdoms, and he had a great military mind. But good soldiers don't always make good kings, as Robert's biggest failure is he didn't think about the future of his reign and what would happen after he died. He just maintained the status quo and left the responsibilities to his council, and they weren't all trustworthy.
King Robert was strong. He won the rebellion and crushed the Targaryen dynasty. And he attended 3 small council meetings in 17 years. He spent his time whoring and hunting and drinking until the last 2 killed him.
When Viserys' father Balon died of a burst belly, a vote was called to decide who would succeed his grandfather, King Jaehaerys. Viserys, or his cousin, Princess Rhaenys. Viserys was named king and was told the Conqueror's Dream, a song of ice and fire, a prophecy about an unknown threat from the north, and the only way to defeat it is the prince that was promised to unite the realm. Viserys would later have his own dream about having a son. This dream would be an obsession to the point that he would neglect his daughter and only child Rhaenyra and constantly impregnate his first wife Aemma, even though most failed to come to term. Due to complications during labor, Viserys ordered for a cesarean in an attempt to save the baby but kill Emma, and the child died the following day. Viserys was devastated, but unlike Robert, he didn't wallow in his grief. At the time, the sole heir to the throne was Viserys' brother, Daemon, and though he loved him, Daemon was too violent and impulsive to be king, and after Daemon named his recently deceased nephew the heir for a day, Viserys banished him to Runestone, and names Rhaenyra as heir, but he doesn't choose her simply due to a lack of options. He asks her what dragons mean to her, and she says that without them the Targaryens are just like the other lords of the realm, displaying that though she is a princess and a dragon rider, Rhaenyra understands that her family is human and not these heightened beings that control the dragons, which Viserys also understands and is what keeps him humble throughout his life.
The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power man should never have trifled with.
And though Rhaenyra does make mistakes and acts out in her youth, Viserys scolds her and corrects her mistakes by being a wise father and a commanding monarch. And through him, she learns how to be an effective and wise ruler. Even when he did have sons with his second wife, Viserys maintained Rhaenyra's claim to the throne, especially since Aegon was an immature deviant and Aemond was more volatile than Daemon, and they didn't get better with age. Throughout his reign, Viserys maintained peace within the realm, even though his body was dying to throne leprosy. There's one scene between him and his new hand, Lionel Strong, where he wonders what would have happened if he had to go to war and if he would be remembered well. Though he was physically weaker than Robert and not a great warrior like his brother, he was a good king and remembered well. He managed to make peace with the Velaryons after he rejected their marriage proposal to their daughter by wedding Rhaenyra to their son. And though Viserys was patient and judicious, he would threaten those who would question Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. When the lords of Westeros commented that he would soon make Aegon heir, Viserys accuses them of stirring rebellion. When Daemon is believed to have coupled with Rhaenyra, he threatens to cut out his tongue. Viserys dismisses his old hand Otto Hightower when he deduces that he's working his own agenda, and Viserys decrees that anyone who accuses Rhaenyra's sons to be illegitimate be put to death. Now, they are, and it's never directly stated in the show that Viserys knows, but I surmise that he does and wants to protect Rhaenyra because she is his daughter, the last remnant of his late wife, and the best ruler to succeed him, because again, Aegon and Aemond are terrible. Viserys' final days truly highlight his strength of character. Rhaenyra is called to court to protect her second son Lucerys' claim on the Driftmark throne. Since he is a bastard, it would not only remove any inheritance Lucerys has, but also weaken Rhaenyra's claim to be the future queen. Though the disease has ruined his body and he is in constant pain, Viserys sits the throne at his daughter's behest and reaffirms Lucerys' claim to Driftmark. While his entire family is together, he has his last supper with them and asks not as their king, but as the eldest member of their family, that they set aside their disagreements and keep their family strong. I think there's a misconception about Viserys as a character, since I've heard people say he's too passive, whereas I see him as someone who truly feels the weight of the crown and rises to meet each challenge without resorting to war, especially since after he died, Viserys was respected by those who knew him throughout his reign.
My cousin, your father, possessed a kind heart.
I'm very sorry about your father, Princess. He was a good man.
You never think of your father. His forbearance, his judiciousness, his dignity.
Everything Viserys does leads back to the Conqueror's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire, because he truly believed that there was a great threat coming, and everything Viserys did, keeping the peace and choosing a proper Targaryen heir, was to ensure the future survival of the realm. Whereas Robert, though a renowned warrior of legend, just wanted to keep the throne to replace the loss of Lyanna, and didn't care for the small details that kept the realm from falling into chaos.